Well, when it rains, it pours. When it's not going your way, nothing goes your way, including a ball four that should have been strike three. And I guess we don't need robo umps, and the Angels get swept. And John and I are pretty bummed. So let's talk about it. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John. And this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and click that bell to be notified every time a new episode drops. And today's show is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use our promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. And currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today.
Thank you for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our second season here with you at Locked On Angels, and it's always a pleasure to talk Angels baseball Monday through Friday, every single weekday, even when they get swept, Mike. So we'll talk about that coming up here in just a second. But on today's show, are the Angels irrelevant? And how would you handle Anthony Rendon's injuries? We're going to talk about that on this episode. But first, let's talk about that loss yesterday to the Padres. Ended up being a sweep. The Angels lost 5-3, Mike.
If you're a struggling team and you want to get right, come on down to Anaheim, and we would love to help you out, right?
Or
Johnny,
invite us over to your town.
Invite us to your town. Hey, we'd be glad to accommodate whatever you need. Sandoval was on the mound in this game, and he's coming off a pretty bad game in his last outing where he really just kind of lost his cool, gave up 6-7 runs in an inning, and really, really struggled. He did a little bit better in this game, Johnny. Didn't pitch terribly, 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, 4 walks, and 5 Ks. He did struggle in the first and third, but that's kind of expected with Sandoval. He really struggles in those 2 innings, and he made an error in the first inning on a pickoff throw to second base that scored a run that probably should have never even happened.
What are you doing? Why?
They're trying to get him out of the inning, I guess.
You could tell he didn't want to finish that inning by throwing pitches, right? Like he was trying to figure out any other way that he could get out of there. So he throws a second and goes sailing. So good grief.
Yeah, and he has really a tough time with shutdown innings. And so when the Angels got him a run, he gave up another run, and then they had to come back and get another run. It was kind of a back and forth battle last night. Johnny was removed after 85 pitches. And of course, everybody was wondering, like, what's going on there? What do you think the thought was there? Was it because of the third time through? Was it because Phil Nevin just wasn't confident that he would be able to face the heart of the order? And I didn't see any reports after the game specifically about that, except that, Phil Nevin was just ticked off and fired up because he got kicked out. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Phil Nevin said in the post game that he just felt like Sandy had a couple of taxing innings, which is true. That did happen. And if I'm in his shoes, I wonder if Sandoval's going to make it through the 6th inning too, especially against the guys who are coming up in that inning. Mike, I ran a poll on Locked On Angels on Twitter just to see what people would think. And 57% said that he should have left Sandy in, and 43% said, go to Soriano. That's baseball, right? Soriano gave up his first home run of the season to Manny Machado on a pitch that just was up enough for Machado to do something with. And then he looked good the rest of the way for the most part. If I'm going to take out my starting pitcher, I'm going to go to Soriano in that situation. So it was just like a catch-22, right? You're danged if you do and danged if you don't, because if Sandoval comes out there again and gives away the game, then that's the conversation that we're having. Somebody on Twitter suggested, maybe bring Sandoval back out, and if the runner gets on base, then that's when you make the move. And I think that that's a smart play, but I also think that the emphasis on clean innings is also important, especially for the relievers. They got to be able to come in without guys on base. So either way, I think it's just a lose-lose situation. I understand having Sandy at 85, it means that he can go that other inning. But that third time through the order, I think that is advantageous to the Padres, especially with the fact that he was going to face the heart of that lineup. At the same time, I don't know how much trust you can place in Sandoval, given the performance that he had through those first couple of innings. I mean, look, he locked it down. He looked great, and he got through. He had 3 innings back to back, which was great. But he's so unpredictable, right? I don't think that there's a decision here where you can go, oh, here's the easy decision. Why don't you do that? I just think it's baseball, right?
Yeah. And it just feels like when everybody struggles. It's not just one person, it's everybody. And there's just a shakiness. This is that moment in, was it the Super Nintendo, Johnny, or maybe the N64, when your baseball player would like get really nervous and it would start to rattle. And then they
that's like the show, man.
And then like they improved that with the show, right? You're really starting to rattle and the dial is like all over the place. It feels like that with every Angel hitter, and it feels like that with every Angel batter. Good news is when they went down, Matt Thaiss immediately hit a home run, which is something he desperately needed because him and Chad Wallach have really been struggling. They filled in nicely, but they are the third and fourth options. Let's remember that. And then Jacob Webb comes in the 7th inning. Johnny, he does really well. He looked really strong, and he should have been out of the inning, but there was a moment where he threw a 3-2 pitch that was not called a strike. Even Matt Thaiss jumped up thinking that it was a strike, and Jacob Webb yelled, "Where was that at?" Jerry Lane was all over the place last night.
Yeah, Machado even thought it was a strike. He was like,
Machado's walking to the bench.
Yeah, all the Padres were like, I don't know about that one. It was all over the zone. Nevin gets tossed, and rightfully so. And then immediately after he gets tossed, there's a changeup that's way below the zone, and Jerry Lane goes, strike. So I don't know if that was because he got yelled at or if he's just really bad at his job. But man, it was just insane. Nevin got tossed. That loaded the bases. Bogart grounds out. A run scores on that one, and that
should have been the third out.
It's really the difference in the game, right? Yeah. And you kind of wonder if Webb hadn't cut that off from Moustakas, if Moustakas had a play at the plate. I know Fernando was coming down the line there.
Yeah, they did talk about that on the TV side, and Gooby did say, Fernando's running pretty hard and he's really fast, and so that would have to be a strike at the plate. And we haven't seen the Angels be too successful when they've thrown to home plate and tagging people out.
And he didn't have to tag him out though, because it was bases loaded. So
it was bases loaded. That is a good point.
Touches home plate. I think you have a better chance in that moment to do that, but Webb cut that off. Look, and then Chris Stavinsky, he walked in a run, and overall the Angels had 9 walks in this game. So those pitchers have to clean it up because they gave runs away in this one. Mike, I said something on Twitter, and I wonder what your take is.
Okay.
We lost 5-3, but I felt like this game didn't have a single inning blow up from a starting pitcher. It didn't have like a sloppy play on defense. In fact, Joe Adell made a great play in left field, running one down for Sandoval, I believe. And I felt like, you know what, this was a baseball game. It was a good team who's on the up and up against our team who's down on their luck. And it ended up being 5-3. And it sucks to have a loss, but I felt like at least it wasn't a terrible loss like they've been the last few days, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what makes this really difficult, because as fans, we're like, well, hey, it was a quote unquote good loss, right? It was a baseball game loss.
I hate saying it's a good loss. I'm not going to say that.
Right.
What I'm saying is I think about the situation where, they're down 3-2 and Matt Thaiss comes in, first pitch, hits that home run. So they were just in this game.
They were competitive and that they haven't been in this series until that 9th inning on the 4th of July. Right. Yeah. And so I think that's the part that is really frustrating with this team is where's that energy? And I felt that they had some of that energy last night. And I love that they moved the lineup around. I love Escobar at number 2. I love Joe Adell behind Shohei Ohtani.
I'm calling you Manager Mike from now on. I get to be GM John. You get to be Manager Mike because you called that top of the lineup yesterday. And I thought that was fantastic. Now, Escobar went 0 for 4. Ohtani went 0 for 4. Yeah. That's not going to happen every single game. That rarely happens.
And I want to point out just 2 things. One, I want to point out how when the Angels scored their first run, you know how they did it, John? They moved the runner over. Moniak was on, Escobar had contact, and then Shohei had contact, and then Joe Adell hits a double down the line. And people were kind of giving it grief, like, oh, it's just a dribbler down the line. Listen, he made contact and hit the bag.
It bounced off that bag and got away.
You're going to take those things. That looks like a line drive in the box score, right? And so that's what I loved about that moment. And that's what I loved about this team last night was they had moments where they were moving the runner over. Velasquez bunted, and that was good. It didn't really result to anything after that.
Didn't even ask Lance Lynn if he could bunt in that one.
That's good. Yeah. And I think bottom line, Johnny, is that what we saw last night is a baseball team. Unfortunately, this baseball team, I think, is like 5-17 in their last 25. And so that's where really it starts to hurt, right? So the day off comes at the right time, and the All-Star break comes at the right time. I know we have 2 more against the Dodgers, and right now it's Griffin Canning and Reed Detmer. So we're throwing 2 of our better pitchers at them, which I think is fantastic. And they're going to have Tyler Anderson be in the bullpen. But Johnny, I think we got to get these 2. And I know that that's a lot of pressure. Obviously, we want to do it one game at a time, but finishing the All-Star break under 500, I think would just be completely unacceptable.
Yeah, I agree, especially where they have been and where they want to go. I think 500 going under that is going to be a disaster. So if they can at least maintain 500 or better going into the All-Star break, you and I have said, like, people asked us, when would you trade Ohtani? And I have said, like 10 games under 500 at the deadline or at the All-Star break. Like, because 500 at the All-Star break is not the nail in the coffin for me. And it hasn't been for teams like the Phillies or the Braves. And you've got guys coming back like Drury and Neto. Those guys are coming back soon. And surgery went well for Mike Trout. So we'll see what happens there. Apparently it's a big golf injury, Mike. So when I said, have you ever heard of this injury? It's a big golf injury. So Mike Trout opening that stupid golf course and playing too much golf over the offseason. That's what happened.
Put it in his contract. Can't do it anymore, bro.
No more golf. Hey, the Angels are playing the Dodgers on Friday. Of course, they're sitting at 45-44, still 4 games back of the 3rd wild card spot. They're playing the Dodgers in Los Angeles. I was thinking about going, but I don't know if I want to go. They're playing at 7:10 Pacific time on Friday. And of course, they're putting out there with Griffin Canning and then Reed Detmer's on Saturday. You can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast on SiriusXM, the SXM app. Just search Angels. And coming up on Locked On Angels, somebody said that the Angels are irrelevant on the ESPN morning show.
That's good.
If they are so irrelevant, how do they become relevant again? We'll talk about that coming right up.
Today's show is brought to you by the Sleeper app. Sleeper is a fantasy sports and real money gaming app focused on bringing people together through sports and gaming. This app has become the fastest organically growing fantasy platform in the world with over 5 million active users just last year. Here's how it works. You can choose between 2 and 8 of your favorite baseball players and decide if they're going to perform better or worse than their predicted stats. And if you get your picks right, you could win big because Sleeper is now offering a payout of up to 100 times what you bet when you play the 8-pick contest. The Sleeper app works quickly too. Entries can be made in 30 seconds or less, and there is a safe and fast withdrawal on all payments. Download the Sleeper app today, and when you do, use our promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today.
We want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Locked On Everydayers, don't forget that you can join us for Fan Mail Friday, and you can send your questions in to us at Locked On Angels on Twitter, at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. And if you're down, give us a call on our voicemail line, 714-409-6396. That number is in our episode description as well, so you won't lose that. We'd love to hear from you and take all of your questions. We know that you guys have thoughts and feelings about the last few weeks, and so we'd love to answer and respond to those. So now, Mike, we're talking about Anthony Rendon and the injuries that have just piled up on him this season. In the offseason, he spoke about how being healthy and being there for his family is important to him and how baseball is a job for him. That got a lot of opinions and clicks and things like that about what he had said. And with all the injuries that he's faced just this season, would you be surprised if he retired at the end of this season?
I wouldn't be, John. And I think the guy has been very clear about how he wants to be healthy for his family and healthy for his wife and healthy outside of baseball. And so I wouldn't be surprised. And his quote from the 4th of July when he got hurt was pretty interesting. I mean, the guy has said, like, it's comical that I keep getting hurt, right? And it's kind of fluke things where, the ball hits me or I felt it off my kneecap, those types of things. And so I think the guy is probably as frustrated as fans are. And I don't think that he doesn't care. I think that he deeply cares. But I think that there is going to probably be some really deep thought about what he's going to do this offseason. Now, I don't know how his contract works. I don't know if he retires and he still gets the money. I don't know all of those details.
I don't think he does, Mike. I think that when you retire, I think you leave that money on the table. And that's the reason why I don't think that he's going to retire. I mean, he signed through 26 and he's making, 30 plus million a year. I'm not leaving that on the table. And maybe he's got enough to be set for life. And that would be fantastic. I will never take away somebody's payday who's, been through playing baseball your whole life and working your way up and earning a good contract. I won't take that away from anybody. And the Angels are the one who decided to go out and get him. I mean, it was Billy Epler and Artie Moreno who signed him.
Yeah.
And maybe we don't make that decision now because, remember that conversation about getting Trey Turner, and Artie really wanted to get him. And Perry Manassian said, well, Artie, if we do that, then that's going to be a lot of money in one basket. Right. And we need to spread that wealth. And so now Artie Moreno seems to be more convincible when it comes to Perry Manassian. So I don't know if they make that deal with Rendon if Perry Manassian's at the helm, or at least the timing of it now. If Rendon were a free agent coming off that national season, I don't know if they make that move.
Yeah.
I just think like I said, I'm not going to take anything away from a guy who's earned his contract. But right now, Anthony Rendon is not earning the contract with the Angels. And that's the risk you run when you sign somebody who's 29 going on 30. And that's what happened with Anthony Rendon. He came out in that 2020 season. It was only 60 games. He looked great. I say this all the time. Top 10 in MVP voting in that year because he had a great season. Then the injuries pile up. And I can understand, this year being so super frustrating because we saw the hip issue in 21. We saw the wrist issue in 22. Now it's been different IL stints all throughout the year to the point where the Angels have to compensate and bring in Gio Urshela. And then when he gets hurt, you bring in Eduardo Escobar. You're taking money off the table because you have to pay Rendon, and you have to do it in a thrifty-like way because then you trade for Gio because you can't trust Rendon over at third. You trade for Escobar because you can't trust Rendon over at third. And his bat's not been great this season either. It started out really well. I said this yesterday. He didn't have the power early on in the season, but at least he was hitting for average. He was hitting runners in and moving them over and being productive. But now, ever since that first IL stint, he just hasn't been the same. So I am kind of pleased that other guys are getting the opportunity here.
Yeah.
But you can see how this contract really hangs up the Angels and ties their hands because they don't have money to spread around because so much is going into Anthony Rendon, right?
Yeah. And I think when you look at what he's going to be able to do after the All-Star break, let's say that he doesn't go on the IL and that he is going to be okay after the break, I think that you have to put him in there as often as possible. I think that this idea of, he's going to play 2 or 3 games, you need to give him a game off. I think you just got to throw him out there because what you do consistently is what your body's going to adjust to. And I think that that's a part of the reason why he's getting hurt a lot. I know some of them were fluke things, but like a part of the reason why you got to be out there all the time is that your body is in the mindset of I'm going to do this. And I think the example of that is Shohei Ohtani, John. Shohei can go out and pitch. He can hit and he can look fantastic. And even when he has a blister on his hand, I mean, the guy played with a busted elbow a few years ago, right? And he was great. Yeah, he was great. He wasn't the Shohei he is today, but he was great. And I think that that's something that the Angels need to consider with Anthony Rendon. He's got to be in there, and he's got to be in there pretty often. And I also think that maybe it would be better if you put him over at first base and then maybe have Escobar or Moustakas at third base because he's not going to have to dive and move around too often. I don't know how much experience he has over there, but I think that it would be almost a natural transition because third base is the hot corner for a reason. And first base, you always, in softball, you put the worst player there, right? So like that's what you do. And I think with Rendon, he's going to have a good glove over there. That's the thing that I think he really brings to this defense is he does bring a good glove. He's really made some bonehead errors this season, but honestly,
It's the catching that's been great because you see him
Yes.
making stabs and stopping the baseball from getting through the infield. You can do that on the right side. You can
Yeah.
do that from first base.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to throw across the diamond. And that's kind of the part where we all hold our breath when it comes to
Right.
Anthony Rendon, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I think with this guy, you gotta just roll him out there. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he did step away at the end of the season, but I think that the thing that will probably keep him there, Johnny, is the resource, because he's probably not going to leave that money on the table.
Well, speaking of resources, we know that the Dodgers have plenty of resources, and the Angels are playing the Dodgers on Friday at 7:10 Pacific time. Catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Yesterday, Stephen A. Smith made a comment about the Angels. I think it's the first time he's ever talked about the Angels. Actually, it's not. It's the second
It's
time.
not. And
We'll
we'll
get to the second
that.
time, right?
Yeah.
So here's what he said. He said, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, by the way, they haven't been that in like almost 10 years. No one cares about you. I've been to LA quite often. I've never heard anybody talking about the Angels. You're irrelevant. This was in response to a discussion on what the Angels should do with Shohei Ohtani. And Stephen A. said that they should trade him. So let me just get this straight. So the Angels, who Stephen A. Smith says are irrelevant, should trade the player that makes them relevant. That's what he's saying.
Great
And then
logic.
his defense behind it is that, well, look at Babe Ruth was traded. Right. Babe Ruth was traded, and then the curse of the Bambino happened to the Red Sox, right? And did we not learn anything from that? Because that was a dumb move. The Red Sox should have held on to him, right? Because then he became a terrorizer of the Red Sox for his entire career. And again, this isn't the first time that he has said something really ridiculous about Ohtani and about the Angels. He was also the one that said Ohtani couldn't be the face of Major League Baseball because English isn't his first language. So this guy is absolutely winning. I didn't realize that he was still on ESPN until he started talking about the Angels. So
Right.
that's the thing that was really frustrating. And so let me just bring some clarity here, and then I'd love your thoughts. John, Angels aren't in LA. So if you are in LA and they're not talking about the Angels, it's because the Dodgers are in LA.
Yeah.
The Angels are in Orange County, and we haven't had Anaheim in the name, by the way, since 2015. And so, Johnny, let's talk for a moment. I want to get your thoughts on, first, Stephen A. Smith's ridiculous take.
Well, listen, I live in LA County, and it's a rare sight to see other Angel fans. And then there's kind of a bonding moment where I'm like, hey, an Angel fan, right? Because I don't live in Orange County.
Yeah.
And if I did, I'd be surrounded by Angel fans out there. It would be so much fun to be out there and be around other Angel fans. So, yeah, first of all, he's got his location completely wrong. I'm in LA all the time, and I don't hear them talk about the Angels.
I drive by the stadium all the time. That's Anaheim and Orange County, homie.
Yeah, you're going the wrong way, brother.
Yeah.
Listen, the last time they had baseball talk on First Take was when he made his stupid comment about Shohei Ohtani and how he can't be the face of baseball.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that the Angels are irrelevant when you barely talk about baseball, when ESPN decides to actually cover baseball for a change, because all I ever see from First Take is basketball and football and things like that. When the clips come up on the show, the only time I ever see clips come up about baseball is when they're talking about the Angels. They're talking about Ohtani. They're talking about Mike Trout. They're talking about the matchup in the WBC. Guess what? It was two Angels in that matchup. The two greatest players in the game facing each other for the first time in the most momentous occasion, the final out of the WBC. What did they talk about on First Take? They talked about the Angels. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Right.
So to tell me that the Angels are irrelevant, well, if they're so irrelevant, Stephen A., then why are they the only time you talk about baseball on your stupid show that's going to get canceled pretty soon because ESPN's making all these budget cuts? So it's just insane to me, Mike, what these guys do for clicks. And that's why I didn't even address it on Twitter. I knew that we were going to talk about it. But the fact is like, I'm not going to perpetuate the nonsense that people spout sometimes by resharing and doing exactly what they want us to do. They're doing exactly what they want us to feed into. And that's, oh, can you believe what Stephen A. said?
Yeah.
And then you go about sharing it and things like that. Mike, here's what makes a team relevant: winning.
Right.
You got to have a winning team.
Right.
And the Angels haven't won since 2014. And in order to remain irrelevant, according to Stephen A., they have to trade their best player who gives them the best chance at winning this season. I
Right.
mean, this team without Ohtani is a disaster at the end of the day. Like, they have a lot of special players coming up, but a lot of them are hurt right now. And
Right.
to remove Ohtani from the equation makes it even worse. I think that the curse of the Bambino obviously affected the Red Sox for so long. I think the Los Angeles Angels is the curse in which that is cursing us right now, thanks to Artie Moreno and his marketing genius is what's cursing us, because the minute we lose Anaheim in our name, we haven't been back to the playoffs. So we don't need another curse to be placed upon us by getting rid of getting rid of the unicorn. So what do you think, Mike? Most logical way forward here? Keep Ohtani, trade Ohtani? What are your thoughts?
I think that we could really dive into this in a segment on a different day, but just a quick thought for you. I'm keeping Ohtani, and the reason why I'm keeping Ohtani is because of the fact that he's Shohei Ohtani, and I want him on my team. And I know that there's the narrative out there that you can get a lot of prospects and you can get a lot of different players, and that is a perk if you do trade him. And then also people are saying that if you keep him, how are you going to be able to afford him? Here's my thoughts. One, I'd rather have Shohei all the way through this season. I think with the guys that are coming back that are going to be healthy, I think that we'll actually be back to the team that we were before this really tough stretch, which is why if we can stay above 500 before the All-Star break, that'd be awesome because Drury and Neto and those guys are coming back. Second thought is, and something you and I've talked about privately, is that Shohei's making $30 million this year. So let's say that they give him a $50 million a year deal. Shohei is going to be making $50 million next year. It's only adding $20 million to this payroll. And there are going to be some players that come off the payroll, and perhaps we're going to find ourselves not getting some of the maybe best starters out there, but we're going to have Shohei. And here's where I think that we really miss the boat is that Shohei takes up one roster spot, but he's two players. And if we lose him, we're going to need to get a bat and we're going to need to get a really good pitcher. And that's going to be about $50 million. And so do we want to get those two players or do we want Shohei Ohtani? And at this point, we're still in it. Only 4 games out of the wild card. I think we run till the end with Shohei Ohtani. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think you can't give up what you still have Shohei Ohtani on this team. And I want to know specifically from anybody listening who might disagree, what is the theoretical haul of prospects where we get 5, 6 top prospects, top 100, top 10? Like, where's this coming from? What team is going to do this move? What team is going to bankrupt their future to get Ohtani? And exactly how many prospects do we expect to get in return? Because I just don't see it. I don't see it for 3 months, 2.5 months of Shohei Ohtani. I don't see it, Mike. I don't see that the Angels can reset their entire franchise if they trade Ohtani. With who?
Right.
With one guy from the Dodgers, maybe 2? That's going to change the entire franchise. I know
they're not guarantees. They're not guarantees at all, Johnny. They're minor league players right now, and if they're not in the majors, they're probably not going to be in the majors because no team that's in a playoff run are going to get rid of any of their major league players or their depth, just like we aren't going to get rid of any of our depth if we're going to make trades for big-time players.
And I think the one team that makes sense, and Locked On MLB solely talked about this on yesterday's show, the one team that really makes sense is kind of the Baltimore Orioles because they have the talent there now, and then they also have the extended talent into their system. But again, a haul of prospects, like you're just picking them up like army men out of the bucket, like that's not going to happen.
Right.
I don't see that happening at all, Mike. And I just don't think it's realistic to think that this trade at this point is going to be a franchise reset and be the result that everybody thinks it is.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And remember, the Angels play the Dodgers tonight at 7:10 Pacific time. Sorry, on Friday at 7:10 Pacific time. I would love a game tonight because we got to wash this sweep out of our minds. You can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. You're going to want to do that because, Mike,
it's Fan Mail Friday, and we would love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you could respond to our Shohei Ohtani conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts. Maybe even give us some ideas of who the haul would be if they were to make a trade. And you can also call us on our voicemail line, 714-409-6396. Direct message us, comment below if you're watching on YouTube, hit us up on Twitter and Instagram. We'd love to chat with you on Fan Mail Friday.
Looking forward to Fan Mail Friday with you. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Friday.